Now, despite the one-sided beatdown of Kaido in the past couple of chapters, I think we all figured that there's obviously more to Kaido. I feel like this was very obvious since the beginning, and one of the reasons that Oda is given so much spotlight for the scabbards is because this is something that they've been waiting for 20 years. There's been 20 years worth of build-up storytime wise, and I guess he wants the scabbards to have some sort of gratification for the events that took place 20 years ago with Oden. Even if they lose, at least they were able to hurt Kaido. But this chapter can be easily perceived as the turning of tides, in which Kaido is getting more serious and the stakes of the battle is getting higher. Up until now, the scabbards so far have had the edge, outclassing Kaido in every situation so far. It's very easy to say that the scabbards have been very dominant in this battle up until now. But again, it's only a matter of time before Kaido kicks in those gears, and I think this chapter is the beginning of that. But before we dive into that, let's start from the beginning. Now, this chapter, interestingly, didn't have a lot going on. If anything, just the progression of certain events of the last chapter. But there's some few things here and there that we can go in depth in. Now, the chapter starts off with the citizens of Wano and the Flower Capital celebrating the Fire Festival. And what's very interesting here is that this is the only time of the year that they feel somewhat free. And they feel this way because of the idea and hope that the Kozuki will eventually come back one day to free them from Orochi's grasp, even if they didn't believe it. But that idea is what makes them look forward, and this honestly goes to show how deep rooted this is. And what's even more crazy is that these are inhabitants of the Flower Capital, the Flower Capital being the most prospering part of Wano, and even then the people of Wano are still consumed by fear. And it's funny because this fan fiction idea of the Kozuki fighting Kaido in Onigashima is actually taking place right now, so you can imagine the relief that's going to be felt once Kaido is defeated. And it's going to come as a surprise because most of what's taking place in Onigashima right now is something that only people on that island are aware of. So I think the moment of when the citizens of Wano get their freedom back is one that we're all looking forward to. We then move on to Queen, Zoro, and X-Drake side of things, and here we get to see Queen use a new invention very similar to the plague bullets that we had in the Udon prison, but this apparently is Queen's greatest invention, where the bullets are able to turn people into some sort of ice demon, as it was mentioned in this chapter, and this causes them to attack other people, which in return spreads the virus even more. So it's very similar to the one used in Udon, but this is a lot different, whereas this changes the person completely in a way where they lose sanity and they go berserk in some sense. And again, with Queen, we're starting to see science play a much bigger role in battle. I mean, science in One Piece as a whole has been very underrated, and I think what we're seeing here might only be a glimpse of what individuals like Vegapunk is capable of, especially with the reveal of the SSG, which is obviously science related and something that's able to, you know, replace one of the three great powers. I think as the story moves forward, the role of science will become even more greater, and I think Vegapunk's reveal is something that I think will be massive for the story, and which I think he will most likely be revealed in the next arc. Now we then move on to Sanji, Luffy, and Jinbei's side of things, where they are pretty much telling Luffy to conserve his energy and not to jump into any fights that he sees, which is very reasonable, as that is something that Zoro was actually worried about ever since they got into Onigashima, because if you want to fight Kaido, I think you might want to be fresh and not worn out when you reach him, and obviously that's what Jinbei and Sanji are there for. But again, given Luffy's personality, I'm not going to be surprised if he engages in another battle. But it seems like we're getting closer and closer to Kaido because the tide of the battle is changing, and I feel like Luffy is going to come at a time where the scabbards are going to need it the most, where someone is probably going to be very close to being killed, and you know, obviously Luffy comes in a very dynamic entry and, you know, saves whoever. We then move on to Yamato and Momo side of things, in which we have Bao, who is able to locate them using some sort of ability via the cat, which she informs King about their whereabouts, and being the first commander that he is, King is able to pretty much find the root cause of all this and point everyone's attention towards Momonosuke, given that he thinks that all the samurai would lose their will if he died. Now that's true to some extent, but Momo did say that the war would keep going regardless, even if he died. But King is also right to some extent, because if they lose Momo, there will most likely be a loss of hope within some of the samurai. But again, very expected from first commanders, as they are very quick on their decisions. And with King, we're seeing that he is somewhat the brains of the Beast Pirates, and even over Kaido to some extent, which is usually the case for all first commanders in any Yonko's crew. The first commanders usually take over when when the captain isn't around, and even in some cases when the captain is around, they take over as well. So with King, we're seeing him play a very active role in finding ways to take out the opposition, and he seems to be very efficient with how he does things as well. Now, the first person to catch up to them was Sasaki, and it's very likely that a battle is going to take place here. Initially, I thought Yamato was going to fight Black Maria because it was kind of hinting towards that in the last chapter, but it seems like Sasaki might be that person. So very interesting chain of events, and this could be the beginning of Yamato building some sort of trust with Momo. And finally, we arrive with Kaido versus the scabbards, which was pretty much where we left off with the scabbards using Oden's technique. And here we get more clarity about certain things relating to Kaido. So Kaido pretty much confirmed that his wounds hurt when he's reminded of Oden again, which could be a PTSD thing, which we kind of assumed based on the initial attack of the scabbards a few chapters ago. Again, it seems to be in the same sense as Big Mom with Mother Caramel, and so even though they were able to hurt Kaido or do damage to him, it's not to the same degree as Oden, where it left a permanent effect on Kaido's body, and it basically gave him a wound that he couldn't heal from. And that's also another thing that bothered me about Kaido. A lot of people forget, but the whole thing about Kaido is that he's unable to die. But they didn't necessarily mention that he was immune to damage. Yeah, they did mention that the chains broke and the spears broke and all of that, but they did also mention that he was also defeated several times. And for someone to be defeated, you would have to take damage in some way, shape, or form. So it's very likely that Kaido has some regenerative properties with his dragon fruit, maybe to a very similar extent as Marco's, but not on the same level, obviously. Again, which could tie into the Zoans having this insane recovery time. And again, Kaido's fruit being a mythical, his recovery time might be a lot quicker than regular Zoans and ancients. Now, Kaido also says that there most likely won't be any samurai as powerful as Oden, and it's very obvious that this line is in reference to Zoro, and Zoro might be that person to reopen that scar. And I'm actually looking forward to Zoro's encounter with Kaido, and if Kaido would recognize Enma, and there is obviously a lot of foreshadowing that's going into that, and we're seeing it happen more and more. But again, it seems like Oda is opening up the mysteries of Kaido more and more as we keep moving forward, but it's very obvious that we're not there yet, because I do think we are going to get some flashback with Kaido, and I think that's where we're probably going to get some huge reveal. So that is something that I and a lot of people are looking forward to, as to what Kaido is, his origins, and how his body works. Is it some sort of hockey defense, or is it actually his natural body emitting something that we're not aware of yet? Now, the chapter ends off with Okiku losing her arm, and I feel like this is the indication that the tide of the battle is going to change in Kaido's favor, and the stakes are going to be increasingly high for the scabbards. Okiku lost her arm. I think Ino and Neko might be reaching their limit in their Sulong form, because we know that there's a timer on that, and as the battle drags on, it's just going to keep getting worse for the scabbards. But of course, we know that Luffy is eventually going to make his appearance very soon, and that's going to be a very great chapter. I did also find it interesting that Kaido has a lot of different breath attacks, and I think we're starting to see more and more of his mythical abilities. In the last chapter, he was shown to be able to use lightning, and in this chapter he used a wind attack. So I'm guessing to some extent that he has control over some of the elements, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has control over the earth as well, because I believe in Chinese mythology, these dragons were able to control all elements depending on the mythology. So there's obviously more to Kaido's fruit than just the things that we're seeing, like the fire breath and him flying. I think there's definitely more that we haven't seen yet. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Comment down below what you guys think about this chapter, where you guys think this is going to go moving forward. Like the video if you liked it, and subscribe for more One Piece content on this channel. You can follow me at FerroSpace on Twitter. But again, it is Ferro, guys, and I will see you folks later. Peace.